My name is Megan Wallace, and I've spent most of my 29 years playing the unwanted extra in someone else's spotlight. Growing up in a sleepy suburb outside Savannah, Georgia, our lives seemed picturesque from the outside: 2 daughters, a dentist father, a stay-at-home mom, and a white picket fence. But inside our house, everything revolved around my sister Jessica, the golden child. Jessica was 2 years older and 2 worlds more adored. She wasn't particularly brilliant, kind, or talented, but she was beautiful, loud, and dramatic, and that was enough. When she lied, she was confused. When I told the truth, I was manipulative. When she stole my diary, read it aloud to dinner guests, and laughed. My parents told me I should have kept it better hidden. Every birthday of mine had chocolate cake, her favorite, despite my lifelong hate for chocolate. "We didn't know," Mom would say, slicing it with a smile. They knew. Jessica always got more clothes, more time, more attention, more love. When I cried, they called me emotional. When she cried, they hugged her like the world was ending. By the time I was in high school, I realized that being invisible at home had made me surprisingly likable outside it. I had friends. I had people who liked my quiet loyalty and calm humor. Jessica, not so much. By junior year, her social circle had vanished. She blamed me. And so, I became her new project. Whenever I tried to go out with friends, suddenly they were bad influences or mean to Jessica. I wasn't allowed to sleep over anywhere, even though she could disappear for whole weekends without so much as a call. The only reason I survived those years was because of my cousins, especially my Aunt Lisa's daughters. They treated me like family when my own didn't. One night at a family barbecue, I casually told them, "I'm not allowed to hang out with friends because my sister doesn't have any." That spread fast. There was an epic family argument after that. My parents called me a liar and grounded me for a month, but oddly, I started getting a bit more freedom after that. For once, shame worked in my favor. Jessica switched to a private high school after that. Of course, my parents paid for it, even though it was a longer drive and more expensive. I overheard them whisper about how she was sensitive to bullying and deserved a fresh start. Meanwhile, I was still taking the bus to our overcrowded public school, being told I needed to toughen up. The years rolled on. Jessica never let go of her grudge. When I got my first boyfriend at 17, she flirted with him. Shamelessly. Short shorts, flirty smiles, whispering lies about me to him. He came to me one afternoon and said, "Your sister told me you're controlling and toxic, but I don't believe her." My parents, of course, believed her story, that he had tried to kiss her. They forbade me from seeing him again. I dated again. And again. Same pattern. My sister would flirt, lie, and cry victim. Each time, my parents would say I had terrible judgment, that I was too trusting, and somehow always to blame. By the time Jessica graduated high school, barely, she was already being praised for every mediocre milestone. A B on a test. Celebrated. My straight as. Expected. She got into some overpriced arts college in Florida. No scholarships, no real plan, but my parents promised to pay everything. When I asked about college, my mom smiled and said, "We'll see, honey. Let's get Jessica settled first." She came home every other weekend. Every time, my room would be mysteriously rifled through. My clothes would go missing. My shampoo replaced with water. My car seat moved forward 2 inches. She never stopped being a ghost in my space. When I was a high school senior, my mom sat me down and said calmly, "We won't be able to help with your college. We're already paying for your sister's tuition and rent. Maybe you should work for a few years first. Or go to community college." They added that if I wanted to live at home, I'd have to pay rent. My sister. She lived free of charge, of course. That was when something inside me snapped, but quietly. I nodded. Said I understood. Thanked them for being honest. What they didn't know was that for the past year, I'd been working my butt off in secret, applying for scholarships, tutoring on weekends, writing essays late into the night. I'd never banked on them helping me. I knew better. By spring, I got a full ride to a solid state university 3 hours away. When I got the official email, I posted about it online with a picture of me holding the letter and publicly thanked my loving parents for their encouragement. Now they couldn't back out without looking terrible. They pretended to be proud for about a week. Then Jessica came home for a visit and suddenly, everything changed. "Are you sure you're ready?" my dad asked. "College is hard. You're not as responsible as Jessica," my mom added. But I went. And those 4 years were the beginning of my life. College didn't just save me. It reintroduced me to myself. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Megan, the afterthought. I was just Megan. And that anonymity was liberating. No one knew about Jessica. No one compared us. I was judged for my own choices, not hers. I made friends, real ones. The kind who didn't vanish the moment my sister's sabotage started. I joined the campus literary journal. I stayed up too late talking about everything and nothing. I even learned to say no without apology. I met Caleb my second year. He wasn't flashy or overconfident like the boys Jessica always chased. He was a history major who loved hiking and old war documentaries. He spoke softly but laughed loudly. And when he asked me out, I said yes before fear could get in the way. Caleb never tried to outshine me. He never minimized my quietness. In fact, he called it my superpower. "You see everything," he'd say. "Even the stuff people try to hide." We dated for 3 years. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was steady. It was safe. And after everything I'd been through, safety felt like a miracle. I didn't tell my parents about him until we'd already moved in together after graduation. Predictably, the news went down like a lead balloon. "You're living together?" my mom asked, horrified, as if I'd said I was moving in with a convicted felon. "That's not how we raised you," Dad added. But they hadn't raised me at all, really. They'd raised Jessica and tolerated me. I kept my distance after that. Caleb and I built a life in Asheville, North Carolina, a little mountain city that felt like it had been waiting for us. I opened a cozy bookstore cafe called The Stacks, and he started teaching high school history. We adopted a rescue dog. We hiked on weekends. Life was simple, peaceful. Then Jessica called. She was getting married. To a man named Tanner Mitchell, a startup guy from Austin with a startup beard and too many opinions. Jessica said they'd met at a silent meditation retreat, which was hilarious because silence was her worst enemy. Still, she was in love, her words, and she wanted me to be her maid of honor. The irony nearly made me choke on my tea. "I thought you hated me," I said. "Oh my God, Megan," she laughed, "don't be dramatic. We're adults now." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted to believe people could change. Maybe I wanted to test if she had. Maybe I was still, somewhere deep inside, that kid trying to earn her sister's approval. Planning the wedding was chaos wrapped in beige linen. Jessica had ideas, most of them ridiculous, and I was expected to execute them. My opinions were ignored. My schedule didn't matter. I flew back and forth more times than I care to count. But Caleb kept me grounded. "She's trying to rattle you," he said, one night as I angrily deleted another passive-aggressive text from her. "She doesn't have to try. She just exists. She'll implode eventually," he said, kissing my temple. "All you have to do is wait." I tried to believe him. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Jessica dropped a bomb. "I want to walk down the aisle, before you." I blinked. "What? Like, pretend it's my wedding too? Just for a moment?" She was dead serious. "I already bought a white dress," she added, smiling like it was a gift. I stared at her across the bridal boutique, unsure if I was hallucinating or just witnessing a new level of narcissism. "You're asking me," I said slowly, "to let you walk down the aisle at my wedding, wearing a wedding dress?" "Just for pictures," she said quickly. You know how Mom always said it wasn't fair that I didn't get married first. It would just balance things out. I laughed. Out loud. Because what else could I do? You're insane. Jessica's smile faltered. Well, if you're going to be a BTCH about it, then never mind, she snapped. Later that night, I got a call from my mom. You hurt Jessica's feelings, she said. I hung up. I didn't speak to my family again until the wedding weekend. It was held at an estate in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a place I'd picked for the view and not the price tag. Caleb's parents, who were kind, practical, and weirdly obsessed with gardening, helped us fund it. My parents offered nothing, not even their presence, until, of course, Jessica decided to come. She arrived the day before the wedding with my mom in tow. My dad didn't come at all. Jessica greeted Caleb first. You're still with him, she said, faux whispering. You really could have done better. Caleb smiled. Thanks for the reminder. She winked at him. Winked. I saw it. And I knew then, like a sudden unmasking, that Jessica wasn't here to celebrate me. She was here to destroy the one thing I'd built that she couldn't copy. The next 24 hours were a blur of stress and wine. And then, the night before my wedding, it happened. I walked into the bridal suite to grab my speech notes and found Jessica. Standing in front of the mirror. Wearing her white dress. Smiling. Spinning. As if she was the bride. As if she hadn't stolen enough already. I didn't say a word. I just closed the door behind me. And locked it. Tomorrow, I would get married. But tonight, I would finally get my revenge. And for once, my sister wouldn't see it coming. I sat on the edge of the bed in my room, staring at the envelope in my hands. It was thick, too thick for something as simple as a speech draft. But I wasn't holding my vows anymore. I was holding a plan. It had started forming the day Jessica tried to gaslight me into letting her parade down my wedding aisle in white. A plan that had finally solidified the moment I saw her twirling in that ridiculous designer gown like she was auditioning to be me. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about years of being made small. Years of being ignored. Years of watching Jessica break things she never had to fix. But this time, she'd gone too far. The envelope contained the kind of truth that left scars. And I hadn't meant to find it. It started with a simple conversation, 2 weeks earlier, when I bumped into Lauren, one of Jessica's old high school friends, at a farmer's market in Asheville. You look amazing, she said, hugging me tightly. So, you and Caleb finally tying the knot? I beamed. Yeah, next month. Wow. She smiled, but there was something behind it. A flicker of discomfort. Kind of wild, considering everything, huh? I tilted my head. Everything? She hesitated. Oh. Never mind. I just assumed. You guys worked it out. I froze. Worked what out? Her smile dropped completely. Oh my God, she whispered. You don't know, do you? The next 3 days were a blur of phone calls, texts, and a painful, slow unraveling. Lauren had only known the edges of the story, fragments, rumors. But I dug deeper. It took one phone call to an old acquaintance from college. One message to a girl I didn't even like. One blurry screenshot of a DM from years ago. And it all unraveled. Apparently, during our first year together, when Caleb and I had only just moved in, Jessica had come to stay with us for a weekend. I remembered that visit. She was charming, too charming, and had insisted on sleeping in our apartment instead of a hotel. Claimed it was sister bonding. What I didn't know was that during that weekend, she'd made a pass at Caleb. Subtle at first. Then more overt. She'd cornered him in the kitchen one night while I was in the shower. Touched his chest. Told him I wasn't adventurous. Asked him if he'd ever wondered what it would be like with someone more exciting. Caleb had shut it down immediately. He never told me. He said he didn't want to stir up drama. He said it was nothing. He said he knew she'd deny it anyway. He was probably right. But that wasn't the part that made my stomach twist. What made me physically sick was what I learned next. Jessica hadn't let it go. After that weekend, she began spreading lies. To friends. To acquaintances. Even to Caleb's co-workers, apparently. She told them Caleb had flirted with her. That he'd confessed feelings. That I didn't know. That she'd kept the secret to protect me. It was petty, venomous sabotage. Classic Jessica. I could only imagine how many people in our circle, people I hadn't seen in years, believed that story to this day. When I confronted Caleb, he was pale. I didn't think it would matter anymore, he said quietly. I didn't think she'd keep pushing it after all these years. You should have told me. I was trying to protect you. You were so happy. I stared at him. You thought I'd stay happy, by never knowing the truth. I thought I could fix it on my own. That made me angrier than anything else. Because it wasn't just about Jessica, it was about Caleb making decisions for me, like I couldn't handle the truth. Like I was still that forgotten girl who just wanted everyone to get along. But I wasn't her anymore. So I made a choice. I wouldn't cancel the wedding. I wouldn't fight with Jessica. I wouldn't even confront her. I'd let her walk in like the queen of the universe. And I'd let everyone see her for what she truly was. Back to the envelope. Inside were copies of screenshots, statements from people Jessica had lied to, and a letter Lauren had written describing the night Jessica drunkenly bragged that she could steal Caleb if she wanted to. Lauren had kept the letter all these years. In case you ever needed the truth, she wrote. Turns out, Jessica had been rehearsing for this moment for over a decade. She wanted my life, my love, my peace. But I'd spent too long building myself from the ashes of her shadow to let her take any of it. The morning of the wedding was calm. Surprisingly so. Caleb and I barely spoke. We'd agreed to process everything later. He knew I was hurt. But he also knew I was planning something. Jessica arrived at the venue late, of course. Hair curled. Lashes perfect. Drama in every step. My mom followed like a servant, carrying Jessica's backup dress even though she wasn't in the bridal party. Jessica was wearing pale pink, just barely not white. She looked me up and down and smirked. I almost wore something just like that, she said. Thank God I didn't. Can you imagine the photos? Oh, I can imagine a lot of things, I replied, sipping my mimosa. She didn't catch the tone. She never did. An hour before the ceremony, I handed the envelope to the wedding coordinator. There's a moment, I said, right before the vows, where you'll cue the slideshow. Of course, she smiled. We've got the photos all loaded. I smiled too. Swap the USB. Use this one. She took it without question. Jessica was about to get her spotlight. And this time, it would finally burn. The sun spilled across the mountaintop like it was painted for me. Everything about the day was perfect, the venue, the weather, the subtle gold accents on the arch Caleb and I had chosen ourselves. Guests sat on white folding chairs, sunglasses on, programs in hand, murmuring and fanning themselves as soft acoustic guitar music played in the background. No one could see the storm coming. Jessica wore a pale blush dress that shimmered just enough to draw attention, even if she technically hadn't broken any fashion rules. She seated herself in the second row, directly in the center, where the camera would catch her expression during the ceremony. Of course. I walked down the aisle feeling strangely detached, like I was watching myself from above. Not because I was nervous, but because I was waiting for her moment. For my moment. Caleb stood at the altar in a slate gray suit. He looked handsome. Steady. Maybe a little haunted, but still mine. As I approached him, his eyes locked with mine, and there was something in them I hadn't seen in weeks. Trust. The officiant smiled at us both. Welcome, friends and family. He began the usual preamble about love, choice, and the gravity of marriage. I barely heard it. I was watching Jessica from the corner of my eye. She was smiling too wide. That performative, pageant winner smile that said, "Look at me, I'm supportive. She clutched her phone in one hand. She was live streaming. Perfect. Then it was time for our vows. Caleb went first. His voice trembled at the start, but he found his rhythm. He talked about our bookstore, about hiking in rainstorms, about the moment he realized he loved me, watching me curl up with a worn copy of Jane Eyre on a stormy Tuesday afternoon. He said, "I used to think love was adrenaline. Fireworks. Something loud. But you taught me it could be soft. It could be quiet. And that quiet love. It's the kind that lasts." I felt tears on my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. Then the officiant turned to me. "And now, Megan, your vows." I took a deep breath and opened the small folded card in my hands. But I didn't speak right away. Instead, I turned toward the crowd. "There's something I want to say first." A low murmur rippled through the seats. "My sister Jessica," I said clearly, "has always been a force in my life." I heard a soft laugh from someone. A few nervous glances. "She's taught me a lot about love too," I continued. "She taught me that love, when twisted, can become obsession. That jealousy hides itself behind charm. And that some people spend their whole lives trying to steal what they can't create." Jessica stiffened. Her phone lowered an inch. I held up a small remote clicker in my hand. Pressed the button once. The projector screen behind the altar came to life. The slideshow began. But it wasn't baby photos. Not anymore. The first image was a screenshot of a message Jessica had sent to a mutual friend. "I give it 6 months before she catches him cheating." Then another. "Honestly, he's cute. If he wasn't so uptight, I'd have already tried." Then a transcript of a conversation with someone who claimed Jessica had tried to convince her that Caleb had been secretly texting her. Fake screenshots. Manipulated images. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone in the back said, "Is this real?" Then came Lauren's letter. It wasn't short. I had edited it down to the parts that mattered. The part where Jessica drunkenly told her she was going to ruin Megan's perfect little life just for fun. The part where she admitted she didn't even want Caleb, she just didn't want me to have something she couldn't control. Jessica stood up. "Turn it off," she shouted. The officiant took a step back, startled. "Turn it off." I clicked again. A final image appeared: Jessica in our apartment years ago, smiling with Caleb's mug in her hand, wearing my sweater, a photo she had uploaded on a now-deleted private Instagram account. Caption: "Might as well be me soon, right?" Then, black screen. Silence. Jessica turned to our mother. "Are you just going to sit there?" But Mom looked shell-shocked. Pale. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I turned back to the officiant. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I had to do that. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not going to let her make me look crazy. I'm not going to be the quiet sister while she sets fire to everything I love." The officiant looked at me like he didn't know what to say. Caleb reached for my hand. "Megan," he said quietly, "we don't have to keep going." I looked at him, really looked, and realized something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. Because I didn't have to keep going. I could rewrite this ending. Right now. "I'm sorry, Caleb," I said. And I meant it. But not in the way he thought. "I love you. But I can't marry you." He blinked. "What?" "Not like this," I said. "Not with this hanging over us. Not with all these people still thinking I'm someone I'm not." There were gasps. Jessica was sobbing now. Loud, ugly crying. Her performance had switched scenes. I watched her collapse onto my mother's shoulder. And for the first time in years, Mom didn't hug her back. She just stared at me. Truly stared at me. Like she was seeing her second daughter for the very first time. I turned back to the crowd. "I know this is shocking," I said. "And I'm sorry for the scene. But if I learned anything today, it's that a wedding isn't worth anything if it starts with silence." Then I turned to Caleb. "I need time," I said. "Time to trust again. Time to feel like this moment is truly ours, not something stolen or manipulated. And if you're still there on the other side of that time, then maybe we'll find our way back here. But I can't pretend today. I can't fake peace. He didn't speak. But he nodded. And that was enough. I walked down the aisle. Alone this time. But lighter than I'd ever felt. Jessica's screams followed me, but they no longer stuck. This time, she was the one left speechless. And I was finally heard. The ride back to Asheville was silent. No music. No talking. Just the sound of the tires chewing up the mountain road and the hum of questions that neither Caleb nor I were ready to ask aloud. We didn't even stop for coffee. He dropped me off at our apartment, helped carry my bags to the door, and said, "I'll stay at Zach's place for a few days." I nodded, keys dangling in my hand. "I'm not angry," I said. "Just emptied." "I know," he whispered. And then he left. Inside, everything looked the same. The framed map of Asheville we'd bought on our 3rd anniversary. The yellow throw blanket I hated but he loved. A half-empty bag of dog treats by the door. And yet, nothing felt the same. I sat on the floor in my wedding dress for 2 hours. Not crying. Not thinking. Just being. Eventually, I peeled it off and stuffed it into the back of the hall closet. I couldn't bear to hang it up. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I didn't eat for a day. Didn't sleep properly for 3. My phone buzzed every few minutes, then every few hours, then stopped altogether. The world had seen everything. And now it was watching, waiting. Jessica didn't call. But my mother did. It was the middle of the night, 2:41 a.m., when my phone rang, vibrating violently across the kitchen counter like it was trying to escape. Her voice was quiet. Almost frightened. "I don't know what to say," she said. "Start with why you let her treat me like that my whole life," I replied. "I didn't know it was that bad." "You did. You just didn't care until it was public." Silence. "I'm sorry," she said finally. But it didn't land. Because I realized something then. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I didn't need one. I wasn't the girl begging to be seen. I'd already seen myself, and that was enough. The press got a hold of the story within days. Someone at the wedding had recorded the entire slideshow and posted it anonymously to Reddit with the headline, "Bride exposes her sister's betrayal during wedding vows." Wildest thing I've ever seen. It went viral overnight. People called it savage, brave, petty, poetic. They argued in the comments like it was a courtroom. Team Meghan. Team Jessica. Team this can't be real. They made memes out of Jessica's horrified expression. They called her Blushzilla. Even now, that makes me laugh a little. A journalist from a women's magazine emailed me asking for an exclusive. I never replied. The bookstore became a sanctuary. The regulars didn't mention the wedding. Not even once. They just kept showing up for cinnamon scones and quiet corners, and that was the greatest gift they could have given me. But it was a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after everything, when Jessica finally reached out. An email. Subject line, "You've ruined my life." No greeting. No signature. Just a wall of vitriol. She blamed me for the public shaming. For Tanner calling off their engagement. For our parents refusing to take sides but quietly withdrawing their support. For the hate messages she'd received. For the job she lost after the startup guy she'd met at that retreat decided he couldn't risk the drama. She ended with, "I hope it was worth it." I didn't reply. Because it was. 2 nights later, Caleb came back. Not with flowers or a grand apology. Just himself. We sat on the balcony, wrapped in our own silences, watching the moonlight slide over the rooftops. "I didn't think you'd come back," I said finally. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "But then I remembered that you're the bravest person I know. And I want to be the kind of man who deserves that." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest. And I'd take honest over grand gestures any day. We didn't get back together right away. We started again. Walks after work. Dinner in silence sometimes. Therapy individually and then, eventually, together. The counselor told me, you have to grieve the idea of the life you thought you had, before you can build the one you want. She was right. And I did. Months passed. Jessica went quiet online. No new posts. No stories. Just silence. The kind that doesn't cleanse, it festers. A cousin told me she'd moved in with a friend in Florida, started working as a barista. Tanner was long gone. My parents still visited her, but less often now. Their calls to me came with forced enthusiasm, as if trying to repair something without knowing how to hold the tools. But I didn't offer them instructions. I wasn't responsible for their remorse. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't he, I hosted a small gathering at the bookstore. Just friends. Just light. Just peace. Caleb brought a new book he wanted to show me. Something about quiet revolutions. He stayed after everyone left, helping me clean up. At the door, he paused. If we ever do this again, he said, let's elope. I smiled. If we do this again, I said, we'll write new vows. 1 sentence. Each. Only one. Only one. Enough to mean everything. He nodded. Then left. Not a promise. Not a proposal. But the beginning of something real. Jessica once told me love was about winning. But I've learned the truth. Real love isn't a competition. It's a place you build brick by brick where no one has to steal to feel seen. And for the first time in my life, I was finally home. It was a Wednesday when I saw her again. 8 months had passed since the wedding that wasn't he. Life had started to knit itself back together. Caleb and I weren't rushing things, we were steady, cautious, but stronger for it. The bookstore cafe had doubled its regulars, and I'd finally launched the community writing workshop I'd dreamed of since college. Peace had settled into my bones. Not loud, not cinematic, just quiet, like finally learning to breathe the right way. So when Jessica walked into the stacks, all wind and perfume and unwanted memories, it felt like time itself stuttered. She wore sunglasses indoors. Of course she did. People turned, how could they not? Her entrance was always designed for effect. She pulled off her glasses slowly, like peeling off a mask. Her eyes were rimmed red, but not from crying. She was hungover. "Hi, Megan," she said. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I was surprised by my own stillness. I nodded once. "Jessica." The room fell quiet. I turned to Bryn, our barista. "Could you cover the front for a bit?" Bryn nodded. Silently. Wide-eyed. Jessica followed me to the back office without being asked. Without being invited. Same as always, she made herself at home in places she never earned. I shut the door behind us. She stood, arms crossed, leaning against the filing cabinet like a sulky teenager. I sat at my desk. "So," I said. "What now?" She flinched. "Just barely." "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "You knew where not to go for 8 months. I thought you hated me." "I did," I said plainly. "Maybe I still do. What do you want?" That cracked her. For a moment, the mask slipped. "I'm pregnant," she said. I blinked. No dramatics. No monologue. Just those 2 words, dropped like stones into still water. I stared. "You're, what?" "Pregnant," she repeated. 5 months. I swallowed. "Whose is it?" She shrugged. "Does it matter?" I didn't respond. She looked down. Her voice lowered. "I don't know if I'm keeping it." A silence bloomed between us. I wanted to say, "You've always taken things that weren't yours. Now life's giving you something you never asked for. And you're scared." I wanted to scream, to laugh, to tell her she was reaping exactly what she sowed. But all I said was, "Why did you come here?" She hesitated. Then, Because no one else answered. And just like that, I saw the truth. She was alone. Tanner had cut ties. Her friends had vanished. Our parents, wounded by the scandal, had distanced themselves under the guise of letting her figure things out. Jessica had always been the star, but she'd burned every bridge to fuel her spotlight. Now there was nothing left but ashes and a sister she'd spent her whole life trying to outshine. "I'm not the answer," I said. "I know." She sat in the chair across from me, suddenly small. Human. Tired. "I thought if I could get the perfect man," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "or the perfect wedding, or the perfect moment, I'd finally feel something. Feel loved. Feel seen." She looked up at me, eyes glossy. "But it was always you they looked at," she said. "Even when I had the stage. You were the one people trusted. The one they liked. I hated you for that. I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing." She stayed in Asheville for 4 days. I didn't invite her, but I didn't kick her out either. She slept on the futon in the office. I brought her food. She barely touched it. We didn't talk about the baby again. One night, I found her sitting in the dark, watching old videos on her phone. Our dad's 50th birthday. A family picnic. Me, in the background, reading under a tree. Her, twirling for the camera. Laughing. Always louder than the music. "You think I'm a monster," she said suddenly. I didn't respond. "I think," I said carefully, "you were raised to believe love was earned through performance. That you had to steal it before it could be taken away. That if you weren't the center, you'd disappear." She was crying now. "No makeup. No audience. You hurt me, Jessica." Repeatedly. "But I know you didn't come out of nowhere. You came from them, from years of being praised for the wrong things and punished for the right ones. I was just so scared," she whispered. "Of being nothing." "You were never nothing," I said. "You were just too busy trying to be me." The next morning, she left. No note. No goodbye. But she took a scone from the cafe on her way out. A small, ridiculous detail, but it made me smile. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just. "I kept the baby. I'm going to try not to mess it up. Thank you for not slamming the door." It was signed simply. J. I didn't tell Caleb right away. It didn't feel like news to share. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the bookstore's back room, found a blank journal, and started writing. Not about her. About me. My story. My side. My survival. Because I'd spent too many years being edited out of my own narrative. And now, finally, I was the one holding the pen. It's been 1 year since the wedding that never happened. Funny, how something so public, so dramatic, so raw becomes memory. Not a wound anymore. Just a scar. And even that, fading. The world stopped watching eventually. People moved on. Reddit found a new scandal. Social media buried the story under weight loss tips and celebrity feuds. And Jessica. She stayed quiet. Last I heard, she was working at a florist shop in Orlando. Still pregnant when I got her last letter. Then a photo came. No name. No message. Just a wrinkled newborn, pink and screaming, clutched to her chest. The baby was real. And maybe Jessica was trying to be, too. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not because I felt anything maternal, but because it was the first time in our lives that she wasn't posing. There was no smirk. No calculated angle. No weaponized smile. Just a woman, tired and terrified, holding a second chance in her arms. And I hoped, genuinely, deeply hoped, that she would take it. As for me, I didn't go back to the same life. I didn't want to. The bookstore is still mine, but now it's more than a business. It's a sanctuary. A heartbeat. A place for people who need a soft place to land. We started a program for teen girls who've been silenced too long. Every Saturday morning, they sit on beanbags with journals, learning that their voice matters. And Caleb? He came back. Not as a white knight, not as some grand romantic conclusion. But as a man willing to start over with me, not despite me. We dated like we were strangers. He took me to diners. Brought me library books. Asked me questions like we hadn't lived side by side for years. And for the first time, he told me everything. Not just about Jessica. About his fears. His flaws. His failures. I listened. And eventually, I spoke too. Not from a place of anger, but ownership. Of everything I had survived. Everything I had learned. Everything I wanted now, not from a man, but from myself. We didn't rush anything. We made a pact, no wedding talk. Not until we'd lived an entire year with no timelines, no labels, no outside noise. Just us. Last week, we passed that 1-year mark. We sat on a picnic blanket in the same park where he'd first told me he loved me, beneath the same crooked oak tree, just as the sun dipped behind the mountains. I've never been more proud of someone in my life, he said. Not even your mom when she parallel parked her RV? I teased. He laughed. Okay, maybe that was second place. Then, very gently, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. Simple. Silver. No diamond. It's not a proposal, he said. I blinked. It's not. It's a placeholder, he said. A promise. Not to own you. Not to fix you. Just to walk beside you, however far you let me. I didn't cry. I smiled. Give me your hand, I said. He did. I took the ring. And I slipped it onto his finger. Some days I still wake up and hear Jessica's voice in my head, the taunting tone, the constant edge. Sometimes I dream of that wedding day, except I do walk down the aisle, and no one's there at the altar. But then I wake up. And I remember, the altar never mattered. The vows don't need a witness to be real. I've already made the most important one. To myself. To never shrink again. To never hand the pen to anyone else. To love on my own terms, in my own time. The world expects you to forgive family, no matter what. They say blood is thicker, even when that blood turns cold. But what no one tells you is that sometimes, healing doesn't look like reconciliation. Sometimes healing looks like boundaries. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a locked door and a journal, and the quiet satisfaction of writing the ending they never expected you to reach. And mine? It's not a fairy tale. But it's honest. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because after everything, I didn't just survive the story. I became the author.